Hello and welcome to the Fanalytics YouTube channel. Today we're going to do a Game Week 9 wrap-up. Here are the latest matches. It's a bit of a fiery one this weekend. A lot of red cards, a lot of hat-tricks. Wouldn't you say, Matt?
Yeah, couple of massive derbies as well. We
Hmm.
knew it was going to be a spicy weekend coming in, and it didn't disappoint.
It did not. So let's go straight into it. Let's go to City vs Man United. 6-3. And that's a flattering score. We got to admit, like, Martial's 2 late goals, City were pretty much switched off.
Yeah, it's weird to say a 6-3 might be slightly flattering to the to the losing side, but to be fair to United, we watched the two games against them last season, and it was, I mean, those were diabolical from United.
Yep.
Not so much the score lines, but the performances. At least in this one, you you had a team that at least kind of tried to fight in the second half, looked
There was
to
something there.
attack.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's just at least a little bit of heart, and you know, getting beat by City comfortably, that's going to happen to a lot of teams this season. I think the scoreline looks a little out of control, but I think it's at least a step forward from what it was last season for United.
Yeah, I think a few things were at play. I think we did look a bit rusty. Obviously, we haven't played for nearly a month. And also City kind of came off the blocks really strong. Like really strong. They were ready for it. And our players, I don't think there was much of a tactical about it. It seemed to be much of a which players were more switched on. I felt like some of the goals that City scored, it was just our players just not tracking around, not kind of with it. Maybe it was a bit of rust. And in City game, they might have felt like, oh, we're gonna lose anyway. I'm not too sure about the mentality of the squad. But look at those players they have. KDB, Foden, Haaland. It
Yeah,
was
I
always gonna be.
think I think, and what we'd seen from United over the past few weeks, it's very much it's still a work in progress
Mm,
here. There's a lot of cracks that have been papered over for now.
yep.
They've sort of found a kind of style of play where they can get results, but look, it's so difficult to go to the Etihad and get anything out of it.
Yeah. It was year six Pep versus 3 month Ten Hag. It's not a fair
Yeah,
comparison.
God, 6 years already.
I know.
Jesus.
And one man's been center of it, right?
Oh,
KDB.
he he just doesn't change. He is just ever reliable in that City midfield. They've changed various members of that team throughout those 6 years. Guys like Fernandinho and David Silva have moved on. Aguero's gone. They've replaced him now with Haaland. But Kevin De Bruyne is really the centerpiece. I think he's so important to what Manchester City do.
Mm-hmm.
And in this game, 7 shot creating actions, 5 goal creating actions is mental in one game, and 10 progressive passes. Look, we could have picked out any attacking stat.
Yep.
There could have been any 3 stats to pick out on Kevin De Bruyne. He got 2 assists. He had a few key passes as well. I mean, you name it, he done it. And him and Haaland, it's such a devastating combination.
It's a cheat code. It's
It,
not
it
fair.
is. It is because De Bruyne has got that. He's got that sort of David Beckham
Mm-hmm.
whipped ball. When he plays that early ball, now they've got that guy Haaland who will attack those balls. They didn't have that for a couple of years,
Yep.
and even Aguero, he seemed to suit more the City that work the ball into the box.
Mm-hmm. Tight
But this,
spaces.
yeah, but with Haaland now, they've got the early ball as well. They can hurt you in so many ways. And Kevin De Bruyne, I don't ever see him leaving City.
Nah, he's gonna leave a legend. Man
Yeah,
City legend.
I think he'll be another David Silva. I think where he will get to decide when he leaves Man City.
He's earned it, to be fair.
I, you know, I don't think there's anywhere he'd go in world football above City.
Mm-hmm. True.
You know, it, maybe if Guardiola left and City sort of
Want to
changed course,
revamp?
but
Yeah.
yeah, but I don't think it'll be a massive revamp. I think it will be Guardiola's hinted at succession plan already being in place.
To be fair, City are good with that, with the director of football. They kind of
Yeah,
have a continuity plan. Even when before they got Pep, they were trying to play a little bit like Pep football before he came on board to ease the transition. And that's just a well-run club, isn't it?
yeah. They're from top to bottom. They're great. Thank God we got Arteta from them when we did.
And
He's
Zinchenko and
he'll be yeah
Jesus.
he'll be part of no succession plan there. He's ours.
Let's go to another player of City. I think we can easily talk about Foden and Haaland. You know, both scored a hat trick. Who got the match ball? I don't know. But one player I was quite impressed was Grealish. Didn't get any assists, any goals. It seems like the case for him at City, but he was like a thorn since minute one. I remember he ran at Dalot in the second minute. Dalot got booked because he had to stop him somehow, and it was just pretty much from then he was sort of just driving into the areas, the typical Grealish way, And you can see 11 shot creating actions, 12 progressive carries, and no one can stop him when he's dribbling at that kind of speed, right?
Yeah, and I think City seemed very kind of happy. Maybe not happy, but they didn't seem to put up much of a fight with the whole with Sterling going to Chelsea.
Yeah.
Maybe slightly odd because he's gone to a rival really, but I think a big part of the reason is Jack Grealish because he really is. I keep saying it, but he is the perfect winger in Pep Guardiola's system when he stays wide until as late as possible and he makes those horizontal runs into the box. If he's one-on-one with a defender, he's taking him on and he's going to beat him.
Yep.
And you mentioned Dalot. I mean, when you get your opponent booked in the second minute, you're going to have a productive day. You're gonna have a nice day at the office because there's not a lot they can do after that to stop you. And yeah, I keep saying the goals do need to come. He does need to start showing that end product a little more
for his own confidence, than anything else, right?
But it's not a case of a player that's gone there and it's not working out. Because you really do watch Manchester City games and he does stand out. He does stand out as a player that's playing well. And yeah, I hope it does come for him because, I think people have slightly got the wrong end of the stick with Grealish at City. I think it's been a great signing for them. He really suits them.
Yep. Especially just a few key moments in matches. If it were kind of gone his way, we'd be all lauding 100 million. That's easy. I'm thinking about the Champions League, semi-final where he nearly scored twice. Those are the kind of moments that just go in your favor, and then the public perceptions 180'd on you. So
yeah, it is that because I think people look at that and they think, man, he's got to finish those because then you're right, he finishes that game off. City are in the Champions League final, and we're talking about. Well, what an inspired signing it was. Instead, we're saying, is he really the complete article of what they need?
Very true. Let's go from one signing to another. Anthony, second with 1.5 games. He's now scored 2 goals. This game he scored a cracking, got onto his left foot. This kind of things you see him at Ajax. But also he's the highest presser of the Man United team, 18 pressers. And 14 progressive carries. We're talking about Jack Grealish there with, I think, was it 12? In a game where you kind of need that breath room when you're defending deep. Someone who can carry the ball, and something that I would like to see more of Sancho do to give some kind of space for the team. Anthony was kind of doing it. And it's kind of hard to pick a good player from us because we were all kind of down in the dumps, the early 2-goal leads. But Anthony he seems always fired up, which is what I quite like.
Yeah, he stood out in terms of his performance in this game, and he feels. You mentioned about Sancho. Sancho feels more suited to low blocks, playing against low blocks, I should say, and working those tight areas. Anthony feels right for what United maybe are trying to do at the moment with the counter attack. He feels more explosive.
Yep.
In bursts, and from what I've seen of him so far, he can be guilty of trying a little too much at times. Which, listen, that's just youthful exuberance. He's got all the confidence in the world right now. He doesn't seem to be at all phased by the price tag. If anything, he seems to be
He's a
spurred
showman.
on by it.
Yeah, he's a showman.
He is a real showman, and that's not the worst thing in the world, because in 2 games now in the Premier League, he's got a goal to show for it. Goals against Arsenal and Man City, that's pretty start your United career. And I think the pressing in that attacking third is an important one, because it's something that United severely lacked last season. They were heavily criticised for their lack of work rate off the ball, and sometimes it just takes that one player. He still needs support, because I remember Alexis Sanchez at Arsenal.
Yeah.
When he used to go on one-man missions to press, and after about 30 yards of running, he'd just throw his hands up in the air and wonder why the hell no one was following him.
That reminds me of Bruno. Bruno used to do that.
Yeah.
He's like a single charged ball at defender, and then he looks back and there's no one following up with him, whether it's tactical by the team or.
But it's something that the manager has to insist on, and I think Ten Hag. I think in time that is going to come. I don't think that's what United are trying to do right now. I don't think they've got the personnel to play fully his style of football. But I think it is a sign that Ten Hag is aware. He's very on the ball in terms of what he's got at the moment, and he's figured out ways that he can use that. It reminds me of what Arteta done at Arsenal in his early days when we won the FA Cup, playing that counter-attacking style.
Yeah, it's part of the transition work we're going to do. We already got 3-4 players of his team in mind, but in terms of a player that's missing out, Ronaldo.
Yeah, I mean, I'm getting a bit bored of the Ronaldo talk every week, to be honest. From all the ex-United players, all the guys that played with Ronaldo, they talk about the disrespect and stuff like that. Ten Hag made the strange comment of, it was out of respect to leave him on the bench. It's just bizarre statements from both sides. Look, Ronaldo, we know what he can give teams. But, these are his numbers this season. 212 minutes in the Premier League, just about a third of United's minutes. So it's not like he's been invisible. Not like he hasn't seen the pitch this season.
Yeah,
he's had 12 shots in that time, just 2 on target, no goals, 0.7 xG. I mean, they just right now, United look a better team when he's not on the pitch. The style of play they're playing suits Rashford, suits Anthony, suits Elanga if he plays, even Sanchez to an extent. And, Ronaldo, you're not going to get work rate. And I think for a side that maybe lacks top-end quality, you have to have work rate. You have to work harder than your opponents, and you can't have a passenger. And that's also part of the culture that Ten Hag's trying to build. You spend a year saying, well, the other 9 of you are going to have to press, and we're going to have to sort of accommodate this guy. Well, what does that say to the team going forward? I think that was part of the problem at United, that you try to accommodate these personalities rather than just saying this is style of football and we're all going to buy in, or it's not going to happen.
Yeah, I can completely agree with you. But as a Man United fan, it's a bit hurtful to see his, I guess not his legacy, but you don't want him to go out like this, But I do hope he leaves in January. It's good for him. It's good for us. We're a team in transition, and he's even at this stage, he probably provides the final touch, and that's just we're just way apart from each other in terms of what we can do for each other.
Yeah.
It's like a couple that's kind of drifted from each other.
It always happens with these players. You think of Ozil at Arsenal, and I like that Arteta was brave in that situation. Two other managers had sort of previously not really fancied Ozil,
Mm-hmm.
and it's sort of half frozen
Women.
him out and then brought him back in, and it just got messy. It undermined the whole thing of leaving him out in the first place. But Arteta was like, look, you know, you're not part of the plan here. That's it.
Yeah.
And until we get you off the books, you can turn up to training every day, but you're not going to see the team sheet.
Very true. And let's talk about Arteta. Arsenal Spurs. It's a derby. It was quite an interesting match in terms of both team plays very differently, but they play very well to their style of football. And it was quite a good match, but Arsenal came with 3-1 win.
Yeah, it had the usual ingredients of a North London derby. Home side won. Harry Kane scored a penalty, and there was a red card. And that's pretty much how these games go. They're very, very home dominated, these fixtures. In fact, Arsenal won this game 3-1 last season. So in that sense, maybe not too much to glean from this game, but this is a different Tottenham side.
Yep.
To that Tottenham side last season, Nuno was in charge at Spurs, and things were starting to fall apart already for him. And Arsenal feel like a completely different team now. Yes, the red card changed this game. Emerson with it's just a moment of stupidity. You just can't put your studs up anymore.
Yep.
Everyone
knows it. Everyone knows it.
Yeah, it's you're just asking to be sent off. Some players do still get away with them, and the consistency maybe isn't there from the referees. But I don't think you can complain anymore if you see red for that, and they're not going to overturn it.
Yep.
When they look at it again. But Arsenal were dominating this game. Something I've noticed is they come out of the blocks in both halves. Every game this season, they come out of the blocks quickly. And it's something, at times, they can sort of fall away during halves. They lose a little bit of confidence. The pressing loses a little bit of intensity. But as soon as they regroup and, they come together as a team, when they go back out there, they are right back on it. And it's been a key part of their success so far this season.
Yeah, I love the way Arsenal played. Like, they had 5 people up front pretty much all the whole game. They had Partey, White, Zinchenko kind of controlling that midfield, had lots of space. And the addition with Saliba is like the kind of counter-attack you might have had before. I think it's less, because obviously Saliba's a pacey guy. Cabral is quite pacey. Probably not the same pace as Richarlison and Son, but just enough to sort of just get that kind of edge in mentality. But what I really like about Arsenal is, like, you talk about other teams, like even City to an extent, like on this graph, Leeds, Leicester City, they all have that kind of key player creating these shot creating actions. But you can see here, Martinelli, Saka, Jesus, Xhaka, all in the top 5 in shot creating actions. So it's widespread. Last season, we saw Saka kind of get a little bit burnt out because everything was kind of resting on him. But, Xhaka's kind of step up. Martinelli's kind of got more into the games. Jesus is being a live wire. And even here, Odegaard's missing, but he's in the 10th position.
Yeah.
Where can you stop Arsenal? If it's right wing, left wing, or centre, they got it all covered.
I mean, that is a crazy stat. That is Arsenal's centre midfield and attacking 3, all in the top 10 of shot creating actions. That tells you how Arsenal are playing, and this is going back to their DNA. Well, their DNA under Arsene Wenger. They were always a very attacking team, sometimes at their own peril. But it's so great to see this from Arsenal, and we've sort of alluded to it previously, where last season, you're right, a lot went through Saka and Odegaard on that right hand side. They combined a lot, and Arsenal are a little too reliant on that
Hmm.
at times to be really the only source of goals or creating chances for them. But this is across the board now. It's so hard to shut all of them down over 90 minutes.
It's every zone, and one player that's kind of come to his own fruition. Like he's been playing deeper with Wenger. Wenger did say he was going to be a box to box, and here he is.
He can. I think his intelligence on the pitch, Granit Xhaka. He could play any role asked of him mentally. He knows where he needs to be positionally. With him, it's always just been. Sometimes he can get caught out. You know, not having the physicality, sort of pace wise as well, and things like that. Maybe not mobile enough, or not
Yep.
mobile enough to be considered, elite in the center of the midfield. But he's been an underrated player for a long time. He's always the first to attract criticism when we lose games, but look, 14 key passes, 40 progressive passes, and 3 assists so far this season. This is stuff we haven't seen from Xhaka, certainly in an Arsenal shirt before, and I think it suits him. I think this really suits him. It's just freed him up, that taking that defensive responsibility
Yep.
away from him, because I don't think he's a natural defensive midfielder. He's always been more of a deep lying playmaker. You'd want a ball winner next to him.
Yep.
But actually, now we're saying, hey, let's just move that playmaking. Let's just move that slightly further up the pitch. And all of a sudden, he's making runs in beyond the back four. We mentioned it earlier in the season. It's still crazy to see. I don't think he's ever going to get on the end of one. He just doesn't have the pace, but but he knows he has to make that run. The system is demanding that he make that run, even if it's just to create space underneath. It's brilliant.
I like what you say about his intelligence, because that's the one thing I noticed. Him being up front is because Jesus is kind of going backwards. He's trying to get the ball. He's trying to take the ball as like a false nine. So someone has to take a position. If it isn't Martinelli, Xhaka has to take that position, and he does it quite well. Like players do seem quite, cautious of him. It's not like he's just a body in the box.
Yeah,
he's got some movement.
if someone makes that run,
Mhm.
even if it's a 6'6" centre back, you've got to go with him.
Yeah.
You have to go with him. And I think we saw earlier in the season, particularly when Zinchenko plays and gets forward, where Xhaka would slot into the left back slot, or the inverted left back position. So that's what stands out to me, is his positional awareness. I think he understands the system that Arteta's playing as well as anyone, and he's been great for us. So it's good it's nice to see this for him, because I think he's taken a lot of unfair criticism in an Arsenal shirt.
Yeah, 100% agree with you there. I think if we talk about Spurs in this match, obviously they came with a game plan, as they always do, is sit back deep, watch out for the space, get a loose ball, and go on a counter attack. They've got the players for it. And you can see in this positioning graph, I think they're too far back. I think Richarlison and Son were pretty much in a kind of mid four, and Kane was up front by himself. And that allowed Arsenal just to pass left to right, kind of probing. And they never had that kind of counter-attack threat. They had to take that kind of risk, I would think, especially when you're on derby away from home. Maybe getting that first goal kind of would change the kind of whole match. Maybe if they got the first goal, they just clammed up, and then Arsenal would have to go again. But I think them conceding the first, got the penalty, and then conceding the second goal, I think it kind of killed their spirits. They don't have the other switch of just controlling the game. They need to do this play style. If they don't do this play style, what's going to happen?
Yeah, and this is the concern, and something that's happening way too often, and is partly explaining his lack of goals outside of that Leicester game, is that Son is the one that's getting dragged into central midfield.
Yeah,
because Højbjerg and Bentancur, week after week, are getting overloaded in the centre of that midfield, and Son's being dragged in as the extra guy, and you're just wasting the best of Son there. And in games like this, even if you don't necessarily line up in a 5-3-2, but if you're not going to do that, at least one of those wingers, you can't have Richarlison and Son, because really you are going to need one of those to drag into central midfield.
Yeah.
So, is there a proxy guy that you can play who can sort of play as an attacking midfielder and as a central midfielder as well? Do they have the personnel to play that, or just go straight to a 5-3-2? Because yes, Tottenham style of players absorb pressure, counter attack at great speed, but you're right. If they concede the first goal, it's almost like game plan out the window.
Mm-hmm.
And this Arsenal game, they got soundly beaten. They should have been soundly beaten at Stamford Bridge earlier in the season as well, because they got outplayed that day as well. They were very fortunate to come over the point in that one.
Yeah, very true. And you can see in Spurs' season, right? It's not the highest. This is not what you expect from a top 4 side.
No, and this is the concern. I mean, possession isn't everything. We know that.
Yeah.
But you do want games to be in control. You don't necessarily need to have possession to be controlling a game, but the issue for Spurs, this second number in particular, 15.9 shots faced, that's 17th in the Premier League, the 4th worst. That's way too high for a side chasing top 4.
Mm-hmm.
9.7 expected goals against is around mid-table, which suggests that they're at least reducing the quality of those shots. But you see in this game, Thomas Partey puts one in from 20 yards. That's going to happen every now and again.
Mm-hmm.
That's way too many shots, and Spurs are just sort of relying on not conceding too many of those and being able to counter attack. But I just don't think it's sustainable long term. I think they have to find another way, and that maybe not away at Arsenal. Maybe away at Arsenal is just a game that you say, okay, we are going to lose the possession battle here. This is a game that we need to sit in. But when it's happening at home to Wolves, that's unacceptable. There's no reason Wolves should be dominating you for 90 minutes. That they're not a good side. No disrespect to Wolves, but Spurs, that's not good enough. And they Conte is very, very good tactically. This can't be going over his head.
Yeah, I agree with you in terms of, I think we've reached a point where football has been shifting towards the possession-based game. I think it's more to do with, you want probability in your favor. I think if you have the ball, the probability of you scoring is higher. The probability of you controlling the game is higher. The probability of you, in terms of the structure of your team, you can kind of control, even if you do get counter-attacked, you control the areas where they go to. While this kind of counter-attacking football by Spurs, they're just relying on the other team's mistakes, and they're relying on other teams' no ability to score from outside the box or lucky cross.
Yeah,
it's just taking a gamble when it's unnecessary with the squad they have.
I just think there's 3 types of games in the Premier League. There's games where you're going to dominate possession, or you should dominate the possession battle and control the game. I think there's games where you're clearly going to lose that battle. And then there's going to be a section of games where it's going to be like a really closely contested game where both teams sort of go back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
And to play it on a week-to-week basis where you're saying, okay, you're going to have control of the football, it's not sustainable. It's not sustainable for a club that wants to be near the top of the table.
Yeah, definitely. Let's go to Liverpool and Brighton next. Liverpool, again, not getting the 3 points. We thought after the break, the 2 weeks break they have Thiago back, they have Matic Matip back? Yeah,
Matip.
Matip. And you came in this game, and Brighton, new manager, Potter's gone. Maybe they could like hurt them, but fair play to Brighton and fair play to De Zerbi. Kind of kept much the same system. They came into a 2-0 lead from Trossard. Fair play to Liverpool for getting back into the game by 2 Firmino goals. But they never seemed in control. They never seemed they were the dominant team. It always seemed like either 50-50 or even favouring to Brighton.
Yeah, and yeah, we could. I think Brighton are a smart football club. I think they were smart in hiring Potter. They knew what they wanted, and I think they've done their homework on who they've brought in as well.
Mm-hmm.
Another guy that's going to continue that sort of style of football. They make good signings as well. They're very good in the transfer market, so I think Brighton are still going to be a good side. But I think the story here is Liverpool, and we've been spending much of the start of the season saying, well, Liverpool are going to get going. Don't worry, they're going to get going. Are we entering a point now where maybe actually this is just who Liverpool are right now? You know,
Possible.
because it's, they're still creating a lot of chances. Which you're going to do that when you're throwing 7 players forward for 90 minutes.
Yeah.
But the issue, they are giving up a lot of goals now.
Yeah.
That's starting to become a massive concern for this Liverpool side.
And when I was looking into like Liverpool's stats from last season to this season, you could see, like you said, the goals are still quite high quality. Progressive passes, they're still quite high quality. In terms of defense, Liverpool always been a front foot defense. And you see the attacking third pressures and tackles, they've dropped off. They're either near 5th table, but the numbers were very close. They could have been like 8th in that table as well. So this is a team that, they've lost Mane. They still have Diaz, they still have Nunez. But are these players closing down with the same intensity as they used to? You can tell that even Brighton, they had only like 2 players in the midfield. Normally you would bring a third person in midfield against Liverpool to kind of progress the ball, but they could progress it with just 2 people, just McAllister or there's another guy, Caicedo. Yeah, it was too easy for them to get through from defensive phase to mid phase, and I think Liverpool's press is a concern.
I've seen various theories floated about this. I think Paul Merson said that losing Mane is the difference. I don't think Sadio Mane singularly explains Liverpool's lack of intensity in the press. One player does not give you those numbers, that drop off. Jamie Carragher did a fantastic breakdown on Monday Night Football where he showed how easy it is for teams to get from a defensive base to suddenly like having a man advantage, like a 3-on-2 on the counter attack. It's Trent Alexander-Arnold's coming for a lot of criticism.
Mm-hmm.
Did Liverpool's push for the quadruple at the back end of last season and the way they ultimately missed out on the 2 biggest of those prizes? Is there just mental fatigue? We saw it a couple of years ago when Van Dijk got injured, where Liverpool just sort of had a really off year.
Yeah.
Very, very nearly missed out on Champions League qualification.
This is quite reminiscent of that, to be fair.
Is it just that maybe this style of football under Jurgen Klopp, it is a very intense style of football? Is it just that it needs a circuit break every now and again? Is it just that it's just unsustainable year after year? It could be any one of these things, but right now it just feels a little bit broken for Liverpool.
What do you think about Salah? Obviously, top goal scorer last season, still part of the front 3, the prominent guy, probably playing a bit far wide.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what it is. From the numbers, 22 shots he's had so far this season. He's averaging about 3 or so a game, which is still a good amount, but only 7 of those on target. 0.09 goals per shot. with the 2 goals from those 22 shots, 3.2 xG. So he's underperforming his xG, which is always a concern for an attacking player. That suggests that just, maybe a loss of confidence, just not quite happening for him. Part of it's maybe a bit of luck as well, but sometimes I watch Liverpool and you have Trent Alexander-Arnold getting so high up the pitch. Harvey Elliott's playing in central midfield when he's not really a central midfielder. He's much more of an attacking midfielder.
Yeah.
Really, you'd want him in Salah's position if he was on the pitch. And they all seem to be clogging up this same bit of space. Salah used to thrive on just being able to drive into lots of open space. Him and Mane, they used to be able to attack this open air seemingly because of the way they used to counter attack at great speed. They've fully transitioned into like just total possession masters, much in the vein of Manchester City, but they're not as cute or intricate with the positioning as Manchester City. They sometimes feel overly reliant on just old fashioned just crossing the ball into the box. And good teams can deal with that over 90 minutes and not really face too many problems. I mean, Liverpool are still scoring a lot of goals, so it's not like that's a massive problem, but it is causing problems for them in how susceptible they are to the counter attack. I think they're just flooding way too many players forward. I think they need to find better, more creative ways of creating chances rather than just sheer weight of numbers.
Yeah, very, very true in terms of like Liverpool have always been get the ball up the pitch as fast as possible. But even now, you're getting counter-attacking goals, and that's always been the case with Liverpool. Even in this game, the way Brighton scored their goals, it was quite possession-based, which is fair to be. That's Brighton's way of playing. Like Trossard scored the exact same goal twice. A little ball that kind of slipped past either I think it was Van Dijk and then Trent for the first one. It's a slip ball and left foot finish, and then the third one he was on the other side and he finished from Van Dijk missing the cross. There's individual errors and there's less intensity. There's less kind of switch. We talk about Man United being switched on against City. I think it's the same thing. They're just not switched on every week. But full credit to Brighton.
Oh yeah, but it feels a little disrespectful to Brighton to be talking about Liverpool like this, because Brighton have gone to Anfield and can maybe feel slightly aggrieved that they haven't taken all 3 points. But it's just because it's such a problem at Liverpool, and you're right. I think it's a work rate thing. Some play like Trent Alexander-Arnold is a very big case of a defensive player who has an attacker's mind.
Yeah,
I do think that. I think most players they either have an attacking mind or they have a defensive mind, and he's just not always switched on defensively. And I do think Liverpool need to be less gung ho in that regard. He is playing at fullback. He's occupying positions usually taken up by tens.
Yeah, he's
as a right back.
He's more of an 8 and 10. I think like when they had Henderson, it was good because Henderson would cover, and I don't think Harvey Elliott has that. He's also an attacking minded player, so he doesn't have the cover either.
Yeah, they've got things to figure out, but Trossard scoring two of the virtually identical same goals, that's a no.
Yeah,
you have to not let that happen again, right? If something, I don't know, but Trossard, he's starting to put it together on a more regular basis now. Is something that I'll say about him. Last season he showed this in flashes, but he's really starting to become a key player for Brighton week in, week out.
Yeah, definitely. I think him and McAllister.
Oh yeah, McAllister in central midfield. I just picked a selection of stats here. 19 interceptions. That's 6th in the Premier League. 76 pressures in the middle third of the pitch. That's third in the Premier League, and he has 4 goals, which is top 10 in the Premier League.
Some banging goals as well.
Yeah. So that's just your archetypal box-to-box midfielder, right? Having an impact at both ends of the pitch. And he kind of epitomizes this weird. Sometimes I look at this Brighton team and I think it's such a weird team. I look at the lineup, I'm like, it feels like there's like 4 or 5 players out of position
all the time.
all the time. Like he's playing as like a central midfielder and not a particularly advanced central midfielder.
Yeah, sometimes like a 6, right? And then
yeah, and I always thought of him more as like a 10. I think he's been played as a false 9 at Brighton before. So I think, you know, I know he's gone now, but I think it's a testament to the coaching ability of Graham Potter. These guys could be moved all around the pitch. Trossard, same thing, right? He played a spell at wing back as well.
Yeah, right wing back as well this game.
Yeah, they're just a really well coached side, and I hope that continues. I think it looks like they have done their homework. He's a guy that's had success in the past, playing a similar style of football. Long may it continue, because they've been one of the pleasant surprises over the past 2 or 3 years, Brighton.
Yeah, I think this season they're probably the 3rd best team. Like if I had to rank the teams, let's say the top 5 teams in my head, it's a City. Then just below be Arsenal. Then just below, not just below, maybe a few notches below Brighton. And then
certainly, yeah.
Then all the other teams of like Spurs, Newcastle are kind of like battling for the last 2 positions.
Yeah, and that might even just be genuine as well. That's not even saying we expected them to be here. They're just playing so much better than we thought. They're genuinely probably the 3rd best team in the Premier League this season. Certainly week to week. Can't think of a team that's been, you know, as good as them as consistently outside of Arsenal and City.
Yeah. I definitely like. I'm glad you chose McAllister, because we always choose Trossard and Gross. But I think McAllister, I think he'll be the one that Potter will kind of raid if you had to raid someone from this kind of Brighton team, because I think he can play in too many different positions, and he seems to be the heartbeat of that team.
Yeah, well, yeah. To be honest, the way Chelsea are signing players, they might have about 10 of them.
Yeah, true.
Send them out to all these multiple clubs that they buy around the world.
Let's go to Fulham and Newcastle as the last key match. Newcastle comfortably won this 4-1. This is kind of a case that we've been talking about Newcastle, where they've been building up pressure in the opponent's box and they couldn't just get the goals sometimes. Sometimes it'd be 0-0. But this game, they were clinical, and once they got their first goal, it was just rampant.
Yeah, and Fulham had a player sent off in the 6th minute of this one. I mean,
yeah,
that's a death sentence in the Premier League these days. You can't play for 84 minutes with 10 men and expect to get a result. But I think Newcastle needed a game like this. You know, especially with the key guys out, Isaac and Saint-Maximin, both of those guys out. We've spoken about it, where they've struggled to break teams down, and you know they need to find a way to do that more consistently. And yes, it helps when your opponents have one less player on the pitch, but you know you still have to create the chances. You still have to put them in the back of the net. And you know the old cliche, it can sometimes be harder to play against 10 men because they just cement themselves in and say, you know, you're not going to get past us. So a good result for Newcastle, because it's been a little bit wobbly over the past few weeks.
Yeah, they couldn't just get the final hurdle, I would say. But you could see in this match, they were totally dominant. Possession, shots, crosses, arrows won. What could Fulham do? I do echo your sentiment where, you know, Fulham lost, was it Shavla, 6th minute?
Yeah.
Then lost Mitrovic, 36th minute.
With the Mitrovic, was it, did he come off? Did he limp off? Or was it a case of this game's already gone?
I think because
let's sort of protect him.
I think because he had an injured foot and they needed to protect the lead.
I think because he was carrying an injury, I think they sort of saw the writing on the wall here and thought,
get out.
Get out of here, yeah. And to be fair, that's probably Marco Silva's best tactical decision of the day in this one.
And to be fair, the Paulinho was obviously suspended. They couldn't play Cabano, so we highlighted those 4 players, and we've highlighted in a few weeks that they're the only really players that were probably Premier League quality.
Yeah, Tete didn't
Oh,
start, did he?
oh no, Tete did start, yeah, as well.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's their best players weren't on the pitch. That's also not a help. Um, yeah, should have expected this, I guess.
Well, how do you think about Fulham's season so far?
Well, I don't want to put too much of a dampener on things because they have had a great start points wise, and they've found a way. The important thing, even throughout all these stats, is they found a way to get points, which is previous years they played nice football and
Yeah.
just lost week after week after week, but they've conceded 15 goals. That's good for 17th in the league. They've faced 43 shots. That's good for 19th, and their 15.6 expected goals against is good for bottom. I think, to be fair, I think Nottingham Forest might have overtaken them on a couple of these numbers, but it's still a big concern. And similar to what we were talking about with Spurs and the number of shots that they're facing, week to week, it's like, yes, it's good that you're getting points on the boards, but you're going to have weeks like this where you just get absolutely spanked by an opponent because it's not sustainable to give up that many chances. The kind of quality that you're going to come up against, the players don't need 3xG a game to put 3 or 4 past you. They are going to concede, and to be fair, outside of Mitrovic, have we seen enough goal scoring threat from them to make up for the number of goals they're conceding? I'm not so sure yet.
Yeah, Mitrovic, if you're talking about like a balance sheet, Mitrovic is just kind of keeping them up there. But if he's injured, it's a worrying sight because if they're really heavily relying on him, a little bit injury like this, he just had a foot injury, right? So it's not like a major injury. Imagine if he has a major injury.
Hopefully, for Fulham's sake, it's not major, and he's going to be fine because it is an area they're just short in general, like sort of attacking players. They brought in Willian late in the window, which has sort of helped in that regard. But
when did they bring in Dan James?
I think that was a loan on like the last. How's that guy keep bouncing around? Like, I don't know what teams keep seeing in him.
Pace.
Yeah, he's got a lot of. And what was it? It was 2 goals he scored right at the start of his United career, and
yeah,
that was basically it, wasn't it?
The flash in the pan.
That's what I mean. They just don't. Dan James isn't a guy that's going to get you goals. Enough goals anyway. He might pop off every now and again in a game, but I think those are the things that if you look at Fulham and you say, well, what do they need to improve on? I think they need to find a way to get that XG against down and try and find ways to get goals outside of Mitrovic.
Yep. A hard task indeed.
Yeah.
Let's go on to Newcastle. They've really turned things around with Howie, and this man in particular just keeps on shining. Yeah,
in this game, 5 shot creating actions, 9 progressive passes, 8 progressive carries. Proper central midfielder's performance. That's just a guy dictating the game, and he was only on the pitch for like 58 minutes. Newcastle seemingly also saw the writing on the wall in this game and thought, let's protect our biggest asset, because I think that is Kieran Trippier is very important for them as well.
Yeah,
let's not get that wrong, but Bruno's the guy that really pieces it all together in the middle of the park. He's the playmaker, the distributor. How much are they getting for? 40 million?
Yeah.
Absolute bargain. Because you really notice the difference when he's not in the side. And look, when he's not in the side, it's a midfield that consists of guys like, Sean Longstaff and
stuff.
Yeah.
We only seen the score against Man United, but this is the first match they probably scored not against Man United.
Yeah, and with Bruno on the pitch, I think it helps a guy like Joe Willock, someone that's not really a guy that's going to get on the ball and sort of dominate in that sense, but he's a guy that can get on the end of things. And I'm sure you've got a bit to say on Joe Willock as well.
Yeah, I just want to highlight him because obviously they've had new signings, got a lot of money influxed in, but I like to see managers kind of improve on the last term signings. And Willock, he did have that kind of flashy hot streak, I think, under Bruce, but I think he's more refined in his game. He's that kind of number 8 that kind of dribble, carry the ball, but also gets in for the crosses. I think in this game he tried to score, I think, from the header, and it kind of went to Wilson, but we'll give him the assist anyway. But and the second assist, it was a nice cut across in the box. And you're talking about the evolution of Newcastle's midfield. You're talking about Willock, someone who's a progressive carrier. You got Bruno, progressive passer. You just kind of need that kind of defensive midfield to kind of unlock that kind of their potential. But it's good to see, someone that's kind of from the Steve Bruce era thriving. Same with Sir Maximin.
Yeah, Joe Willock reminds me a lot of Jacob Ramsey at Villa, where they're proper carriers of the ball, not so refined in the ball playing sense. They can't receive it in tight areas and play their way out of trouble like that.
Yeah,
but I do think there's high upside there, and I love Joe Willock. I loved him when he was at Arsenal. I think we did great getting 25 million for him. I thought that was a great bit of business, but I'm pleased to see him doing well, because he had the makings of a proper box to box midfielder, and I think there's a player there. I think at times he went hiding a little bit at times when his confidence was low, which really happened throughout the time that Arteta got there. I don't know whether it was just Arteta's style of football didn't suit him, because he looked a different player under Emery. He looked like a player with confidence under Unai Emery. But I think you're absolutely spot on about the Eddie Howe point, that it is the sign of a good manager when you come in and you make the players that are there better. And Joe Willock's an example of that. I think Joe Willock has become much more of a rounded player.
Yeah.
Over the past year or so, or however long Howe's been there, just under a year now. I think you can point to definitely Joe Linton, who's transformed as a player there as well. So that's always good, because everyone's going to talk about all the big money signings that come in at Newcastle, but actually they've just quietly done this. Even Almiron now looks like a proper player. And
did you see that first strike? it was Van Basten. I had to rub my eyes and see who was that.
I do have to admit, I hate watching him at times, because he's always looking to throw himself to the floor. He's really frustrating, because the talent's there. He's a skillful player, and he
works hard. To be fair,
yeah, he does work hard, and that's something that Eddie Howe's really instilled in this side. Even where, as we've said, the quality might not be completely there yet at Newcastle. There is a team there. There is a team that's working hard, and they've got just enough of a sprinkling of real top end quality in Trippier, Bruno, Sam Maximan, Isaac now as well up front. They've just got real quality, and you have a bunch of guys working hard around them as well. It's going to be a team that does well, and I think they're really going to push for Europe this season.
Yes, it's a scary time indeed. Too many top teams coming in the Premier League, and here's Man United like,
Yeah, it is. If you're one of these big six teams and the pieces aren't all there, it is time to get worried, because there's a lot of these teams coming through. Brighton and Newcastle are there, but I think there's a few other teams on the precipice as well that aren't far away.
Yeah, let's do like a quick rundown of the rest of the matches that played out. So let's start with Bournemouth-Brentford, 0-0. Bournemouth can't seem to buy a goal, really, if it ain't.
But their defensive record continues. has been really, really good, and it's completely skewed by the 16-0 3-game stretch.
Hmm.
But when you take that away, you actually see that this is a side that is doing really, really well considering what they've got.
Yeah,
Keep
definitely.
saying that they still haven't even hired a manager to permanently replace Scott Parker, so they can't seem to bring anyone to the club. But they're getting points on the board. I still think there's going to become a point where the wheels completely fall off. I just can't. I don't know. I can't see it with this team that they're going to keep getting the results that are going to keep them in the division. And even the teams that are kind of struggling, you know, I get the sense that they're just going to find a way to start getting wins again. They're not going to be at the bottom all season long. So
Yeah,
it's really hard to gauge who those teams are going to be right now.
yeah. Bournemouth have sort of like the opposite problem of Fulham, in the
Yeah,
sense that they can defend low block, but they have no goal scorer. They don't have the play style to facilitate. They got Solanke, Billing. They can't seem to get these crosses into them.
no.
But to be fair, Brentford are a good team. They are quite strong physical team as well, so you can't really bully them. But I'm a bit worried that apart from Ivan Toney this season, the goals aren't really come from Mbeumo, Jensen. They used to come from these third man runs that we've highlighted in the past, and they can't seem to create those chances as much anymore. Like even that
Yeah,
Ivan Toney chance they had, it was half a chance really.
yeah. A big part of their success last season was the goals from midfield because, as we've mentioned, Mbeumo and Tony weren't top end sort of scorers. They
Yeah.
they chipped in with a few, but it was really sort of spread the load around the team. I think part of their success last season was their stoutness defensively at times.
Hmm.
And they still feel like that team that can keep clean sheets and things like that. I think I'd like to see a bit more of that from Brentford because you're right. I think outside of Tony, I don't think there's massive goal scoring week to week in that team.
Hmm. Let's go on to Crystal Palace Chelsea. Obviously, Conor Gallagher returned and unfortunately got the winner. Crystal Palace have hard games. It's really hard to judge where
I
they
know.
are at because they got a good squad, but
And look, if you've watched Palace this season, you know they've had some great games. They played decently in this one. They played well at Anfield. Even on the opening day against Arsenal, where Arsenal were kind of in control, Palace found it difficult to sort of break them through. They were coming off the end of a pretty horrific pre-season
yeah.
preparation wise, and still done all right on that opening day. They completely turned over Villa when they played them. So yeah, it's been an unusually difficult like fixture list to start for Palace. The next few games is going to be important. It really settles down for them. We'll really see what they're about. It's always difficult for a team when you start like that and you get to that sort of milestone of like 9 games or whatever the milestone is, and you like,
Yeah. A
crap, we're
quarter
like
way through.
17th, we're 17th here. It's actually getting a little bit desperate, and you kind of lose confidence in what you're doing. But I hope they don't do that because there is a proper team there. They seem like a really well organized, well balanced team. There's goals. There's a stoutness defensively as well when they need to be. I think they're a complete package under Vieira. I just now
Unfortunate, really.
yeah, it's a difficult start in terms of fixtures, and
Was
Chelsea. The Potter era has begun.
Yeah.
I still, even with Potter being there, it still feels like a slightly unusual side, bit misbalanced. Hard to know what we're going to get right now.
Yeah. You kind of see some of the elements of Potter, in terms of they kind of like play the 4-2-2 shape, but Mount, Havertz, Sterling, they all occupy different regions of the pitch. James, it was either playing like a centre back or playing as a right wing back. So there are elements of Potter's game coming. Obviously, it's still early days. They're not going to click straight away. But it's nice to see that some elements of the training ground has come into play. They are slightly shifting from Tuchel's model.
Yeah, and I think one of his big jobs has got to be all these real quality attacking players that Chelsea have. Find ways to get them in their best positions, because I think one of the undoings of Tuchel was too often I looked at that Chelsea lineup and think there's like 3 of their best players are just out of position here. They're not playing in a role that really suits their style of play. So that's something, because if you can get some of those guys firing, you think of the quality they've got going forward, then they're going to score plenty of goals, right?
Yeah, definitely. Let's go on to Southampton Everton. Everton are now unbeaten in 6 games. Props is due. Lampard, we heavily criticized him in the first 2 games, even pre-season. But he has changed my mind. I'm not to say he's a tactical genius or anything, but I do like how he's kind of, this is my squad. It ain't the best. Let's play to get the results, and he is doing that. You can't really say anything bad against that.
I always rated Frank Lampard. No, I mean, yeah, you got it spot on, and I just, a lot of these signings that they made, we spoke about, but they were not marquee signings by a long shot.
Mm-hmm.
And I still question like the Dwight McNeil signing. I don't know what he brings.
Scored a banger.
Scored an absolute banger in this one though. I think it was his first goal. It was something silly like 56 games or something like that in the Premier League. That's too many for an attacking midfielder. But guys like Tarkowski and Cody, England internationals, all right, albeit briefly, both of them, but they are England internationals. And you think of the mess that defence was when it was Yerry Mina and Michael Keane.
Yep.
And without much fanfare, they've actually just quietly got better in that department. Simple as that. And they have the best defence in the league, I think, in terms of goals conceded now.
Wow.
That or their level is something like. But yeah, that snuck past me. I did not expect to be saying that about Everton's defence at the start of the season, but like we said, fair play to them. Southampton kind of feels like what we were saying at the start of the season. It's starting to get away from them again. But Southampton do this. They'll probably beat Man City.
Yeah, that's the thing with Southampton. I wouldn't be surprised. They just turn up and then they're gone for a few weeks.
They get hot for a few weeks. They get cold for a few weeks. They're pretty cold at the moment, but they've got some nice players. Lavia in centre midfield and Bella Kotchap have been really, really good signings.
Aribo's been kind of influential too.
Yeah, I like him as well. He's a nuisance. One of those players that's just a nuisance to deal with.
Big guy, but also kind of got that jiggly feet.
yeah, kind of clumsy.
Yeah,
in a way, but I think that's worse for defenders sometimes. I really do. But yeah, they need to start getting results. Southampton.
Speaking of getting results, West Ham 2-0. We've been waiting for Skamaka to come up. He scored you said he's always scored bangers, and he scored a banger.
right on cue. It was a beauty. And he needed that. I think West Ham needed that. Bowen scored as well.
Yeah,
which is huge. I mean, Skamaka and Bowen scoring, West Ham 3 points, clean sheet. That's pretty much the perfect game for them. I think they just needed a game like that. Wolves.
And if you're gonna get a clean sheet, face Wolves.
Oh yeah, if you're in desperate need of a clean sheet, it's always nice to come up against Wolves. Bruno Lage now sacked. Yeah, I'm not really going to miss him.
Yeah,
I think the writing's been on the wall for a while with them. This was what was happening to them at the back end of last season, and for much of last season they relied on Sarr being an absolutely unbelievable shot stopper, which he still is.
Yeah.
But got to get a manager in that's going to get them firing, because they've got quality. You think of guys like Podence, Jimenez. I know he's not been at his best since the injury, but he's still quality. Huang,
Yeah,
who they signed,
Neto.
Neto came off injured in this. Hopefully, it's not too serious. But Adama Traore is still there. I did not realize that.
Yeah, he's back.
That slipped past me. There's quality there, right? There should be goals on paper. There's goals in that team, so they've got to find a way to unlock that.
Yeah, for me about Wolves, just a quick one before we move to the next match. It's just they all have just the same type of player
Yeah,
everywhere. It's just come on, they're not going to do anything. They're just going to dribble.
Actually, kind of remind me of West Ham. You think of all those attacking midfielders they've got that they just feel like regens of each other. But they play any combination of them, because at any given time, at least two of them are in really good form, and that seems to be enough to get them by.
Let's go on to Leeds Aston Villa 0-0. Aston Villa look threatening. Steven Gerrard is he slowly turning the ship? Not too sure.
Yeah, not too sure. I mean, Jesse Marsh wasn't impressed by them and their time wasting tactics, which seems bizarre, because with Leeds down to 10 men, you'd think they'd be the ones
other way around, yeah,
pressing. But yeah, it's still an issue for Villa. This goal scoring, creating chances. I think Leeds will be obviously delighted with this point, just because of the sending off. And man, what a stupid sending off to get. I mean, to be on a booking and to block a quick free kick is that should always be an automatic yellow. I get really annoyed when players stand in front of quick free kicks trying to stop them, and players often get away with it. I'm glad to see a referee double down and say, no, you're getting a second yellow for that.
Yeah, Nestor, go learn.
I know, and I really like that signing. Sinisterra, I think he's a proper player. I think he's going to be a quality signing for them. But yeah, that's not his finest moment.
And then Leicester, Nottingham Forest. We've been saying for a few weeks, come on, this is the game to take charge. This is the game to turn your fortunes around. And they did it with aplomb, 4-0. But one thing I want to say is like 3 of the goals were outside the box again.
Yeah.
And I looked at stats. They scored 14 goals. And I think 8 of them have been outside the box.
Yeah, it feels like that with Leicester. Because if you look at the XGs there,
yeah, it's close.
They're virtually identical. But yeah, it just, when you got someone like Maddison, you're gonna score goals from distance. It's as simple as that. And the one thing I will say, Vardy looked sharp in the first half. He doesn't have his goal scoring touch back yet.
Yep.
That's eluding him at the moment, but the sharpness is there. And if they get him going again, Leicester are going to be fine. You're not going to play Nottingham Forest every week, so unfortunately, still a massive question mark over them. But like Brendan Rodgers came out before this game and said, this is the biggest match of our season, and this wasn't the usual Brendan Rodgers hyperbole. I think this was genuine. I think this was him at his most honest. I think it absolutely was, because I think if Leicester came out with this with anything other than a win, even a 1-0 win, I just don't think it matters right now. You just have to win this game.
Yeah,
5-4, 1-0, doesn't matter. Just win the game. Otherwise, it's almost bye time for Brendan Rodgers if they don't win this game. So yeah, bigger challenges lie ahead. We said last time out that this run of games was going to be crucial for Leicester. They need to get points on the board, and they feel like a team that's got too much quality to be languishing at the bottom of the table. And this game sort of showed it, because they were levels above Forest.
Yeah, you could tell
at times. Yeah,
the player quality was the big difference. I think Nottingham Forest is still a work in progress. And let's look at the.
And just one quick one on Forest.
Yeah,
we're already getting the Rafa Benitez talk. Steve Cooper might well be in trouble, and considering what Forest spent the way they went about their summer transfer business. It wouldn't surprise me. It feels like they're all in. They're going to take this Premier League ride. Whatever happens, and they're not going to wait around for Steve Cooper to figure it out. If he's not getting results, they're going to bring in someone who will. And it's a shame because I really like Steve Cooper, but he's been given a tough hand here.
Yeah, it's a big job to kind of a completely almost new squad, find play style.
To figure it out on the fly in your first season back in the Premier League in 20 years. Cheers.
Yeah. And as you can see here, Nottingham Forest, Leicester City, still the bottom two. Wolverhampton have now creeped in, but they're at the top. Arsenal.
Yeah.
City close behind. Spurs still close enough, to be fair. Only 4 points difference.
Yeah, I think you're right about Arsenal and Man City. So far, it's looked like those two, and then there's a bit of a gap to Brighton.
Yeah,
and then there's a bunch of teams like Chelsea and Spurs that they've got too much quality, even though they feel slightly disjointed and don't have all the pieces together. There's a lot of quality in those sides, and they don't really need to be at 100% to qualify for Champions League, shall we say? United have got quality in that side. Newcastle are a team on the move. Liverpool, any minute now they'll get going.
We say that every week.
Yeah, but it does. It feels really close outside of those two, and I know Arsenal top. I'm still hesitant to call it a title race. Right now, we just have to finish top four. Let's not put that sort of pressure on ourselves. But to be fair, we look about as complete as I can remember in a long, long time.
Yeah, I consider this. I think Arsenal are in title race because I don't see anyone else. I don't think Man City will run away with it this season. I know they look unstoppable. I do think some games they've already drawn 2 games this season, right? Even when they've been playing at this high caliber.
It's weird. They've got one of the better defensive records, but all right, 2 goals in what the Americans would call garbage time for United, but they conceded 3 at Newcastle as well. Their defense is a little concerning. Edison's been a concern for a couple of years now. His shot stopping isn't anywhere near the top level of the Premier League. He's one of the worst in that regard. And look, Diaz and Laporte were on the bench in the derby, so they probably close to full fitness. So maybe things will get back to normal when they're playing together. But they are conceding a few too many goals. They do still feel like a team that you can score against. It's just can you stop Haaland from scoring a hat trick? I think you'd even say, well, if Haaland gets one, that's all right.
What a machine that guy is!
Oh no, he's unbelievable.
But let's talk about mid-table. You got Brentford, Everton. Everton, yeah, you're right. They've only conceded 7 goals. Incredible stuff.
Yeah, and there's a bunch of teams there where you just feel at any moment it could just go slightly wrong, and you suddenly find yourself in 17th all of a sudden. So yeah, I like what Everton are doing at the moment. They're definitely keeping the goals out. I think they probably need to find a way to score more regularly. They don't have that number 9. Neil Maupay is not going to be that number 9, I'm afraid. But if between Damari Gray and Gordon,
maybe
they can
when DLC comes back.
Yeah, DCL, yeah, DLC, downloadable content. They could do with some downloadable content up front.
Download Haaland to squad.
But yeah, and Villa worry me because they just haven't got going. They've had a couple of fortunate kind of results as well. I look at their season and they feel like a team that could just completely nosedive.
I think they'll get a new manager bounce before then. That's what my thinking is with Aston Villa.
Yeah. Because to be fair to Villa, they haven't they haven't had any of these just like those like 4-0 losses where you just say, okay, this team is just completely there's something. It's just every week it's like this 0-0, 1-0, or maybe a 1-0 scraped win or 1-0 loss where you just do nothing for 90 minutes and you're like, what is this team? You know, what have we got here?
Yeah, they're probably in the same boat, I would say. Not as bad, but same boat as Wolverhampton, I would say.
Yeah.
They kind of they got gears to go because of the squad, but it seems like managers don't know how to get to get to that
You've
place.
got to locate those gears somehow.
But yep, thank you guys for listening to our Game Week 9 wrap up. We'll see you next week. Like and subscribe. Ciao.
Thanks, guys.